"For," he said. "Someone has got to stay with dead people," said Gulta. "Remember when old Uncle Durkheart died, and Father had to go and sit up with all the candles and things all night? Otherwise, something nasty comes and takes your soul off to somewhere," he ended lamely. "And then people come back and haunt you." Cern opened his mouth to start to cry again. Esk said hurriedly, "I'll stay, I don't mind, it's only Granny." Gulta looked at her in relief. "Light some candles or something," he said. "I think that's what you're supposed to do, and then—" There was a scratching from the windowsill. A crow had landed and stood there blinking suspiciously at them. Gulta shouted and threw his hat at it. It flew off with a reproachful caw, and he shut the window. "I've seen it around here before," he said. "I think Granny fed it. He corrected himself. "Anyway, we'll be back with people. Will hardly be any time. Come on, Cern." They clattered down the stairs. Esk saw them out of the house and bolted the door behind them. The sun was a red ball above the mountains, and there was already a few early stars out. She wandered around the dark kitchen until she found a scrap of dip candle and a tinderbox. After a great deal of effort, she managed to light the candle and stood it on the table. Although it didn't really light the room, it simply peopled the darkness with shadows. Then she found Granny's rocking chair by the cold fireplace and settled down to wait. Time passed. Nothing happened. Then there was a tapping at the window. Esk took up the candle stub and peered through the thick, round panes. A beady yellow eye blinked back at her. The candle guttered and went out. She stood stock still, hardly breathing. The tapping started again, and then stopped. There was a short silence. Then the door latch rattled. "Something nasty comes," the boys had said. She felt her way back across the room until she nearly tripped over the rocking chair and dragged it back and wedged it as best she could in front of the front door. The latch gave a final clonk and went silent. Esk waited, listening until the silence roared in her ears. Then something started to bang against the little window in the scullery, softly but insistently. After a while it stopped. A moment later it started again in the bedroom above her. A faint scrabbling noise, a claw kind of noise. Esk felt that bravery was called for, but on a night like this, bravery lasted only as long as a candle stayed alight. She felt her way back across the dark kitchen, eyes tightly shut, until she reached the door. There was a thump from the fireplace as a big lump of soot fell down, and when she heard the desperate scratchings coming from the chimney, she slipped the bolts, threw open the door, and darted out into the night. The cold struck like a knife. Frost had put a crust on the snow. She didn't care where she was going, but quiet terror gave her a burning determination to get there as fast as she could. Inside the cottage, the crow landed heavily in the fireplace, surrounded by soot and muttering irritably to itself. It hopped into the shadows, and a moment later there was a bang on the latch of the stairway door, and the sound of fluttering on the stairs. Esk reached up as high as she could and felt around the tree for the marker. This time she was lucky, but the pattern of dots and grooves told her that she was over a mile from the village and had been running in the wrong direction. There was a cheese-rind moon and a sprinkling of stars, small and bright and pitiless. The forest around her was a pattern of black shadows and pale snow, and she was aware not all the shadows were standing still. Everyone knew there were wolves in the mountains, because on some nights their howls echoed down from the high tops, but they seldom came near the village. The modern wolves were the offsprings of ancestors that had survived because they had learned that human meat had sharp edges. the weather